Hello everyone and welcome back. I am Dr. Supradip Das, Assistant Professor at the Department of Design, IIT Guwahati, and this is the 34th lecture of the course Introduction to Toy Design. In today's lecture, we will examine toy packaging not merely as a protective structure, but as a behavioral system operating within family decision-making environments. Unlike conventional product packaging, toy packaging interacts simultaneously with two distinct cognitive systems: the emotional system of the child and the evaluative system of the parent. We will explore how packaging influences desire, negotiation, risk perception, identity information, and ethical responsibility. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to first identify the dual audience nature of toy packaging, meaning how it communicates simultaneously to children and parents. Second, understand behavioral principles that influence toy purchase decisions. Third, analyze visual hierarchy and layout psychology in toy packaging. Fourth, examine developmental differences in packaging response. Fifth, evaluate ethical implications in child-focused packaging strategies. And finally, assess sustainability considerations in toy packaging systems. These objectives integrate design strategy with behavioral science. Let us begin by observing the image on the right side of the slide. A typical children's toy rack in a retail store. Notice the density of visual information. The shelves are filled with brightly colored boxes, oversized characters, illustrations, bold typography, and transparent windows revealing parts of the toys. This visual saturation is not accidental. It is strategically designed to capture attention within seconds. Toy packaging is not merely protective infrastructure. In this environment, it functions first as a behavioral stimulus. The vibrant color and character dominance immediately activate a child's visual attention. Research in the developmental psychology suggests that children between the ages of 3 and 7 are particularly responsive to high contrast color palettes and familiar character imagery. Their decision making is emotionally driven rather than analytical. Second, packaging operates as a persuasive interface. Each box competes not only for attention but also for preference. The packaging must communicate excitement to the child while simultaneously projecting trust and quality to the parent. Third, packaging becomes a developmental influencer. Age grading levels such as 3+ or 8 to 12 signal complexity and cognitive suitability. These levels reassure parents while also shaping children's perceptions of competence. Fourth, packaging acts as a narrative builder. Many toy boxes depict imaginative scenes, racetrack, castles, outer space environment, encouraging children to mentally stimulate play before the product is even opened. Additionally, packaging functions as a retail attention device. The spatial Placement of boxes at child eye level increases exposure. Finally, it acts as a risk communication tool, incorporating safety icons and certification marks to reduce parental hesitation. Thus, the toy rack we see here represents a behavioral ecosystem. Each package is not merely a container but a strategic mediator between desire and decision. Now, let us examine the two packaging examples shown here. On the left, we see a toy package with a transparent window with visible safety labels. First, transparency reduces ambiguity. When parents can see the toy inside, perceived risk decreases. Hidden products may trigger uncertainty about material quality or finish. A visible product communicates honesty and reduces cognitive resistance. Second, observe the safety levels and icons on the surface. These function as risk communication signals. Certification marks, age warnings, and hazard icons reassure parents that the product complies with safety standards. According to consumer risk theory, visible assurance cues directly reduce perceived risk and increase purchase likelihood. Now shift attention to the packaging on the right, the Woody Sheriff doll. Here, the packaging functions primarily as a narrative builder. Notice how the box is designed to resemble a saloon doorway. The background graphics reference the character's fictional universe. The toy is not isolated as a product. It is embedded within a story context. This design activates imaginative engagement. The child does not simply see a doll. The child sees a character from a large narrative world. This is known as narrative priming. The packaging initiates play before the toy is opened. Importantly, both examples illustrate the dual nature of toy packaging. In toy markets, packaging operates within what we may define as dual audience behavioral system. Unlike most consumer goods, where the purchaser and the user are often the same individual, toys involve two distinct psychological stakeholders, the child and the parent. The child represents an emotional, visual, and impulse-driven processor. Children, especially in early developmental stages, respond primarily to sensory stimuli: color, shape, character familiarity, movement cues, and scale. Their processing is largely affective rather than analytical. When a child encounters a brightly colored toy box featuring a familiar character, such as a superhero or animated figure, the response is immediate and emotional. There is little rational evaluation at this stage. In contrast, the parent represents a rational, safety-driven, and evaluative processor. Parents assess packaging throughout a different lens. They look for age classification, safety certification, such as BIS or CE marks, toxicity declaration, durability cues, brand credibility, and increasingly sustainability indicators. For the parent, the packaging becomes a site of risk evaluation and justification. Because of this dual audience structure, toy packaging must constantly negotiate between competing priorities. First, it must negotiate between excitement and responsibility. The front of the packaging may use bold color and dynamic imagery to attract the child, but it must also clearly communicate safety information and developmental suitability to reassure the parent. If excitement dominates without responsibility, parental hesitation increases. If responsibility dominates without excitement, the child's desire is not activated. Second, packaging must negotiate between aspiration and compliance. Many toy brands position their products as aspirational. For example, STEM kits promising innovation for career, theme dolls suggesting future possibilities. However, these aspirations must remain compliant with regulatory standards and credible educational claims. Exaggerated claims may create ethical and legal concerns. Third, toy packaging must negotiate between play and regulation. Toys represent imagination, fantasy, and emotional expression. Yet they exist within regulated environments governed by safety laws, age grading norms, and increasingly sustainability expectations. The design must preserve the spirit of play while satisfying institutional regulation. This layered negotiation makes toy packaging structurally more complex than FMCG packaging. In a grocery product, packaging may primarily persuade the adult buyer. In toys, however, packaging becomes a behavioral mediator between two cognitive systems: the emotional system of the child and the evaluative system of the parent. Thus, we can conceptualize toy packaging not as container, but as a behavioral interface operating at the intersection of desire and decision. On the left-hand side, we see two toy packaging examples. The upper package displays detailed safety information, certification marks such as CE, material specifications, and instructional details. The lower package, in contrast, is visually bright, featuring bold colors, playful graphics, and a culturally resonant theme. In this case, a Ganesh construction set. Now observe the central image: a family standing in a toy store aisle. The children are holding toy boxes, smiling, visibly engaged. The parents are also participating in the selection process. This composite side visually represents the dual audience behavioral system we discussed earlier. The top left box emphasizes structured information. The typography is controlled, the layout is clean, and certification marks are prominently displayed. This type of packaging communicates primarily with the parents. It signals safety compliance, regulatory approval, and transparency. According to consumer risk theory, visible safety communication reduces perceived purchase risk, particularly in products meant for children. Now examine the lower left box. Notice the vibrant orange and yellow color palette, the pixelated Ganesha graphic, and the simplified typography. This design appeals strongly to the child's visual system. The character-like form, bright hues, and large central illustration trigger emotional attention. The educational claim, 601 pieces and age marking, simultaneously speaks to the parent's cognitive evaluation. Let us now examine the family decision-making model in the context of toy purchase. Unlike individual consumer products, toy buying typically involves multiple roles within the family unit. The flowchart here visually represents the multi-role interaction. The first role is the initiator, usually the child. This stage begins with exposure. The child notices the toy, often through packaging visibility, shelf placement, or character familiarity. The packaging acts as the primary trigger at this stage. The second role is the influencer, again, frequently the child. Here, emotional activation transforms into verbal expression. The child expresses desire. I want this. The packaging's visual dominance, character imagery, or novelty factor strengthens this influence. The third role is the evaluator, typically the parent. At this stage, the packaging shifts function. The parent assesses age appropriateness, safety certifications, price point, brand credibility, educational claims. The fourth role is the decision maker, also usually the parent. Approval or rejection occurs here. If the packaging successfully balances emotional appeal with credible information, the probability of approval increases. The fifth role is the buyer, again typically the parent. The financial transaction is executed. Finally, the user is the child. The experience of play begins. What is critical to understand is that toy packaging must communicate effectively across all 6 roles. At the initiation stage, packaging must interrupt attention. At the evaluation stage, packaging must reduce perceived risk. At the decision stage, packaging must justify value. Thus, toy packaging is not simply attractive design. It is a structured communication system embedded within a family behavioral ecosystem. Observe the 2 children standing in front of a wooden toy shelf. Notice the positioning of the toys relative to their eye level. The most colorful and character-based products are placed within direct line of sight of the children. This arrangement is intentional. Retail environments are designed based on behavioral principles. Items placed at eye level receive greater visual attention and are more likely to trigger engagement. In toy aisles, shelf placement is often structured to align with child height rather than adult height. These simplify the first stage of the decision-making model, initiation. Let us now understand how toy packaging operates across 4 behavioral levels within the family decision-making system. First, the emotional level, as shown in the image of the child interacting with bicycles in a toy store. Notice the child's focused engagement. At this stage, packaging and product visibility trigger immediate emotional activation. Bright colors, familiar forms, and scale drive desire. This is intuitive, fast, and affect-driven processing. Second, the cognitive level illustrated by the close-up of the warning tag. Here, packaging shifts its function. Safety levels, age grading, and certification marks address parental concerns. The parent evaluates risk, durability, and appropriateness. This represents slower, rational processing. Third, the social level, depicted in the image of children playing together. Toys are not consumed in isolation. Peer comparison influences desire. Packaging that emphasizes collectibility, series numbers, or popularity strengthens social validation. Finally, the symbolic level, shown through superhero action figure packaging. Here, packaging communicates identity. Children do not simply buy a toy. They buy affiliation with a character, a narrative, or a symbolic role. These four layers, emotional, cognitive, social, and symbolic, operate simultaneously. This layered behavioral ecosystem makes toy packaging significantly more complex than FMCG packaging, where decision making is typically singular and individual. Thus, toy packaging must be designed not only for visibility, but for multi-level psychological engagement. Before the toy is even opened, packaging has already begun shaping the user experience. This is what we refer to as pre-consumption experience design. In the first image, we see a child during the unboxing moment notice the anticipation and engagement even before the product is fully revealed. The box itself becomes a site of excitement. Packaging delivers visual stimulation, builds suspense, and activates imagination. The emotional experience begins prior to actual play. In the second case, observe the paper doll's packaging on the left. The illustrated characters and stylized presentation create story context before interaction. The child is introduced to personality, narrative, and aesthetic tone directly through the packaging. Now consider the Lego Death Star box on the right. The dramatic space imagery and the clear 12+ age warning communicate both the aspiration and perceived difficulty level. The packaging tells the child this is a challenge, while reassuring the parent about developmental stability. Finally, here in the third case, notice the Funko Pop display case. Here, packaging extends beyond protection. It becomes a collectible object, a storage container, a display asset, and a memory anchor. Many collectors preserve the box as part of the product's identity and value. Thus, packaging in toy design is not secondary to play. It frames expectations, builds narrative, signals identity, and extends the experience beyond the moment of purchase. This image of the Lego Star Wars Death Star illustrates Lego's use of thematic branding as structured cognitive communication. Notice the dark space inspired background, the prominently displayed Star Wars logo, and detailed visualization of the completed model. The packaging immediately communicates franchisee alignment. For the child, the association with the Star Wars universe activates narrative, memory, and character familiarity. For the parent, the clear 12 plus age classification and structured layout signal developmental suitability. Thematic branding here performs dual functions: emotional activation through narrative familiarity and cognitive reassurance through organized information hierarchy. This consistency strengthens brand trust and perceived value. The Lego Classic Creative Brick Box demonstrates a different but equally structured communication strategy. Observe the bright yellow container form, transparent window revealing multicolored bricks, and clearly displayed age range 4 to 99. This packaging emphasizes openness and versatility. The visible bricks reduce ambiguity and increase perceived quantity, functioning as a complex indicator. The phrase "ideas included" suggests guided creativity, reassuring parents that the product supports structured learning while preserving open-ended play. Unlike franchisee-based sets, this packaging highlights creativity rather than narrative, positioning Lego as a foundational developmental tool. The Lego Technic Ultimate Car Packaging represents premium, aspirational positioning. Notice the dark, minimalist background, realistic rendering of the completed model, and the 18 plus marking. The age classification immediately signals advanced complexity and cognitive challenge. The large piece count further reinforces sophistication. Unlike the colorful Lego Classic box, this packaging adopts a sleek, automotive-inspired aesthetic, aligning with adult hobby culture. The completed model visualization occupies central dominance, communicating achievement and mastery. Here, packaging functions not only as information but as status signaling, positioning the product within a mature high-skill category. In this image, we see the completed Lego Star Wars set placed alongside the instruction manual and minifigures. This visual communicates achievement. The packaging does not merely display loose bricks. It showcases the fully assembled model in its final aspirational form. This creates goal visualization. The child sees not the process but the outcome, a finished, impressive structure. Psychologically, this builds achievement aspiration. For parents, the structure presentation reduces uncertainty by demonstrating clarity of instructions and completeness of components. The packaging implicitly communicates your child is capable of building this. Thus, Lego packaging reduces risk while increasing perceived developmental value. These two Lego packages demonstrate age-based cognitive segmentation. On the left, the Winnie the Pooh set uses softer colors, character familiarity, and storytelling elements, signaling suitability for younger children. The imagery emphasizes narrative play and imaginative interaction. On the right, the Lego Technic Planet Art set adopts a darker, more technical aesthetic. The mechanical detailing and orbital model visualization communicate complexity and scientific engagement. The clearly marked age range reinforces developmental alignment. Through age grading, visual tone, and thematic sophistication, Lego packaging signals cognitive suitability while enhancing parental confidence in product appropriateness. When parents purchase toys, they experience what consumer behavior theory describes as heightened perceived risk. Unlike impulse purchase, in low involvement categories, toys directly affect a child's safety, development, and well being. Therefore, the evaluation process becomes more cautious and deliberate. First, parents are concerned about physical safety. They evaluate whether the toy has sharp edges, detachable components, or fragile parts that may cause injury. Second, toxicity is a critical concern. Parents look for reassurance that paints, plastics, and coatings are non-toxic and compliant with safety regulations. Third, choking hazards are especially relevant for younger children. Clear age warnings such as 3 plus and visible hazard icons directly address this risk. Fourth, parents assess cognitive appropriateness. A toy that is too complex may cause frustration, while one that is too simple may appear developmentally inadequate. Additionally, concerns about durability influence perceived value. Packaging that communicates sturdy construction increases confidence. Finally, modern consumers increasingly evaluate ethical sourcing, including sustainable materials and responsible manufacturing practices. Thus, toy packaging must function as visible risk reduction interface. By clearly communicating safety, compliance, and developmental alignment, packaging reduces uncertainty and facilitates purchase confidence. Here, various examples of choking hazard warnings and safety symbols commonly found on toy packaging are shown. These labels function as critical risk reduction mechanisms within the parental decision-making process. The phrase, "not for children under 3 years," directly addresses choking hazards related to small parts. Such standardized warnings serve both regulatory and psychological purposes. They demonstrate compliance with safety laws while reducing parental uncertainty. In toy packaging, these labels must be clearly visible and not visually subordinate to decorative graphics. When safety communication is prominent and structured, it enhances trust, signals responsibility, and supports purchase confidence. Thus, safety labels are not merely legal requirements. They are an integral component of behavioral design in toy packaging. Here, two critical dimensions of risk reduction are shown: material transparency and structural durability. On the left, we see labels such as BPA-free and non-toxic. These visual markers communicate chemical safety and material compliance. For parents, especially in early childhood categories, toxicity concerns are significant. The presence of such certification style icons reduces ambiguity and signals responsible manufacturing practice. Transparency in material composition enhances trust and strengthens brand credibility. On the right, we observe packaging designed with sturdy cardboard structure and visible product windows. The craft style packaging conveys eco-consciousness, while the structured box form suggests durability. Parents often interpret robust packaging as indicative of product quality and longevity. This image here highlights how packaging reduces perceived risk in high involvement toy purchases. Parents evaluate toys carefully due to safety and developmental concerns. Packaging therefore incorporates BIS or CE certification marks, clear age warnings, instructional diagrams, safety icons, and material transparency statements. In the example shown, the back panel provides structured information, reinforcing brand credibility and compliance. These visible cues function as trust signals. In behavioral terms, risk reduction is essential for conversion. When uncertainty decreases, purchase likelihood increases. Thus, packaging becomes a strategic reassurance interface rather than merely an informational surface. Parents do not read packaging randomly. They scan systematically. Research in visual cognition suggests that viewers prioritize dominant imagery first. In the example shown, the front hero image occupies primary visual space, followed by age labels, brand logo, educational claims, and safety icons. Typography hierarchy guides this scanning order. If critical safety information is visually subordinate, trust may decrease. Therefore, layout psychology becomes essential. Educational positioning must appear credible and integrated rather than decorative. Effective informational hierarchy ensures clarity, reduces cognitive load, and supports rational decision making. Parental toy purchases are influenced by emotional motivations beyond safety. These include guilt reduction, the desire to support developmental growth, social identity, signaling such as smart parenting, nostalgia, and achievement signaling through STEM positioning. Packaging supports these emotions through strategic word choices like learning, creative, and safe, along with imagery of engaged, happy learning. Neutral color palettes and clean layout imply seriousness and educational value. Thus, packaging speaks not only toy safety but also to parental aspiration and identity construction. Here you see toys framed through educational keywords and STEM positioning. On the left, the wooden activity cube emphasizes multifunctionality and learning engagement. On the right, the mechanical construction kit prominently displays STEM and model complexity indicators. These textual and visual cues signal developmental benefit. Parents interpret such language as cognitive investment rather than entertainment expenditure. By embedding educational vocabulary within design, packaging reframes purchase as purposeful and responsible. Thus, language, layout, and imagery collectively construct perceived developmental value. Here we explain how children process packaging visually rather than textually. In early developmental stages, children respond primarily to color intensity, high contrast, animated forms, and recognizable characters. They process imagery faster than written information. Importantly, they do not read safety labels, analyze persuasive intent, or critically evaluate product claims. Therefore, toy packaging functions as a direct emotional stimulus. Bright palettes, character faces, and dynamic composition activates desire almost instantaneously. Understanding this visual cognition pattern is crucial for designers, as packaging must first engage perceptual attention before any rational evaluation occurs. Barbie packaging represents a strong example of identity-based communication. The consistent use of pink color coding creates immediate brand recognition. The transparent window increases visibility trust by allowing the child and parent to see the doll clearly. Profession-based storytelling such as doctor, astronaut, or scientist extends the narrative beyond the product itself. The packaging does not merely display a doll. It presents a lifestyle and aspirational identity. Through visual consistency and narrative framing, Barbie packaging projects possibility and reinforces long-term brand association. In this example, we observe two critical identity strategies. First, the transparent window packaging builds trust and reduces uncertainty. It allows inspection of facial detail, clothing quality, and accessories. Second, profession-based storytelling embeds the doll within a role narrative: astronaut, medical professional, or caregiver. These cues communicate symbolic meaning. The child interprets not only the product but the identity it represents. Thus, packaging functions as an interface for self-projection and imaginative role exploration. Children often form what psychologists describe as parasocial bonds with fictional characters. When familiar characters such as superheroes or animated figures appear prominently on toy packaging, emotional trust transfers from the character to the product. In the example shown, the character image dominates the packaging surface, reducing the need for textual persuasion. Recognition is immediate. This increases memory retention and strengthens brand recall. Importantly, character-dominant packaging can also increase resistance to parental refusal, as emotional attachment intensifies desire. Thus, mascots and character imagery function as powerful behavioral accelerator in toy marketing. Toy packaging must adapt to developmental psychology. For ages 3 to 7, decision making is highly visual, emotion driven, and impulse activated. For ages 8 to 12, brand comparison begins, peer influence increases, and functional evaluation improves. Teenagers shift towards identity-based purchases, tend sensitivity, and social signaling. Therefore, packaging cannot remain static across age categories. Visual complexity, information density, typography style, and symbolic cues must evolve according to cognitive maturity. Understanding developmental segmentation ensures that packaging communicates appropriately to each age group. In the image on the left, packaging for ages 3 to 7 uses bright colors, simple forms, and tactile visibility. The visual language is playful and immediate. In contrast, the science kit packaging for ages 8 to 12 emphasizes experimentation, structured learning, and numeric indicator such as 120 experiments. Here, textual information and achievement framing becomes more prominent. As children mature, packaging transitions from purely perceptual stimulation to informational engagement. This shift reflects increasing cognitive ability and evaluative reasoning. Teen-oriented packaging demonstrates a significant aesthetic shift. Action figure boxes and enemy booster packs use darker palettes, sharp typography, and collector-oriented presentation. Identity signaling becomes central. The packaging suggests exclusivity, trend relevance, and social belonging. In this example, the box itself often functions as a collectible or display object. Unlike early childhood packaging, teen packaging communicates status and affiliation rather than simple play. Thus, packaging evolves from emotional stimulus to identity marker as developmental maturity increases. Modern toy packaging increasingly moves beyond static display towards interactive and experiential engagement. As shown in the example of mystery collection, packaging may include QR codes, augmented reality integration, hidden reveals, and gamified unboxing experiences. These features extend engagement beyond the physical product and create anticipation before and during opening. Blind box formats, in particular, introduce uncertainty and reward anticipation, activating curiosity-driven behavior. From behavioral perspective, such packaging transforms purchase into participation. The unboxing itself becomes part of the play narrative, reinforcing brand engagement and repeat buying behavior. When packaging strongly attracts a child, it initiates a behavioral sequence. A visual trigger leads to emotional desire, which translates into a verbal request. If unmet, repeated instance and social comparison, such as "my friend has it," intensify influence. Retail placement amplifies this process. Eye-level positioning and checkout displays increase exposure frequency. Thematic grouping reinforces recognition and familiarity. Packaging therefore influences purchase indirectly through child mediation. This phenomena, often described as pester power, highlights how packaging acts as a behavioral catalyst within family negotiation. Let us now discuss why parents sometimes concede during toy purchase negotiations. Even when risk awareness exists, contextual pressures influence decisions. Time pressure in retail environments reduces cognitive resistance. Emotional fatigue lowers evaluative rigor. Conflict avoidance motivates quicker compliance, especially in public settings. Additionally, reward-based parenting frameworks, such as using toys as incentives, normalize concession. Social comparison, particularly during festivals or celebrations, further justifies purchase. Packaging that strongly activates a child intensifies the behavioral chain. Thus, toy packaging does not operate in isolation. It interacts with parental psychology and situational dynamics to influence final outcomes. Here we introduce ethical reflection. Designers must consider whether aggressive character marketing exploits cognitive vulnerability. Blind box formats may encourage repetitive purchasing behavior resembling compulsion. Overstated educational claim risk misleading parents. Gender coded visuals may reinforce stereotypes. Excessive plastic packaging raises environmental concerns. Ethical toy packaging requires transparency, age sensitivity, awareness of developmental vulnerability, and suitable material choices. Beyond conversion metrics, designers bear responsibility for long term social and psychological impact. Thus, toy packaging is not merely commercial design, it is a socially embedded intervention within childhood development. Sustainability has emerged as a critical concern in contemporary toy packaging design. Increasingly, parents evaluate not only the toy itself but also the environmental footprint of its packaging. Growing concerns include plastic waste, excessive material use, and limited recyclability. Multi-layer plastic blisters, heavy ink coverage, and non-recyclable laminations raise environmental questions. Parents are also attentive to minimal packaging strategies and the use of biodegradable or responsibly sourced materials. In this context, packaging becomes a visible indicator of environmental ethics. However, sustainability in toy packaging is not limited to material substitution. It opens significant design opportunities. For instance, packaging can be converted into play environment, such as printed interior scenes that transforms the box into a backdrop. Flat pack reuse strategies allow packaging to function as storage containers. DIY box transformations encourage children to creatively repurpose packaging materials. Reduced ink coverage and monomaterial structures improve recyclability. Importantly, sustainable packaging now signals responsible parenting identity. Choosing environmentally conscious products becomes a form of social signaling. Thus, sustainability in toy packaging operates at three levels: environmental responsibility, design innovation, and identity communication. This slide illustrates how sustainability in toy packaging can move beyond reduction towards functional transformation. On the left, we see reusable toy storage bags. Instead of disposable outer carton box, packaging itself becomes a long-term utility object. The value proposition shifts from temporary wrapper to extended product ecosystem. Parents perceive higher value because the packaging contributes to organization and durability. This also reduces post-purchase waste. On the right, we observe convertible toy packaging, where the box transforms into a play environment. The rocket-themed packaging becomes a space backdrop, integrating narrative play into structural design. Here, packaging becomes part of the toy's storytelling system. Such approaches align environmental responsibility with experiential design. Rather than asking, how do we reduce packaging, the more progressive question becomes, how can packaging continue its life after purchase? This represents a shift from linear consumption to circular play design. As toy designers, your responsibility extends far beyond visual attractiveness because toy packaging operates within a dual behavioral ecosystem, engaging the emotional system of the child and the cognitive evaluation system of the parent. Designing for dual audiences means creating excitement without compromising safety communication. Respecting developmental psychology means understanding that children respond to visual stimuli, characters, and color before they process logic. Communicating honestly requires clarity in age grading, educational claims, and material transparency. Avoiding manipulative tactics such as exploitive blind box addiction or exaggerated learning claims reflects ethical maturity. Integrating sustainability ensures that packaging does not contradict the value we claim to promote. And finally, balancing aspiration with responsibility ensures that while we inspire imagination, we do not distort expectations. Packaging is not merely branding, it shapes early consumer behavior, identity formation, and childhood experiences. As future designers, the question is not only how attractive is this packaging, but rather what behavioral system am I designing into? Let us meet in the next lecture. Till then, stay playful and inspired.